Hey guys, welcome to Cooking with Eden, where I will take you on my journey of passion for food. What we'll be doing on this channel is learning how to cook different meals together. A lot of you guys and girls out there have a lot of questions about preparing different meals. Sometimes it can seem a little bit overwhelming, a little bit scary, but it's really not that hard. So on this channel or this show, I'll be teaching you step by step how to prepare a lot of the meals that look quite complicated, but are really very easy to put together. So join me as we take this journey together. Hi guys, welcome to Cooking with Eden. Today we're going to make a sumptuous lasagna. I've always had a strong passion for cooking. Many of you have known me for doing menswear suits, but today we're going to switch it up and we're going to do a lasagna. Stay tuned, follow the steps, and let's do this together. So today we're going to be cooking a sumptuous Italian lasagna, very authentic. As you all can see, I look Italian, don't I? I'm just kidding. Anyway, I'm going to take you through the steps of cooking this lasagna. What you're going to need is you're going to need your pasta shells. I like to use oven-ready lasagna, and I'll explain that a little bit more in detail as we go through. You're going to need a can of whole plum tomatoes. This is what we're going to use for our sauce. It's not specific to any particular brand. This is just what I had in my pantry, and so we decided to use this today. I also like to use diced tomatoes just to give that, thick, rich, chunky bits of tomatoes inside of my pasta sauce. So we're gonna need the diced tomatoes. Again, not specific to brand. You're gonna need a whole onion that we will chop up to start your sauce, some fresh garlic, and some fresh basil. I like to put a little bit of red wine in my pasta sauce, so you really could use any type of wine. It doesn't have to be a specific kind, but as long as it's red, since we're making a red sauce, we want to use a red wine. You're gonna need some olive oil to start your sauce, to saute your onions and your garlic. I like to use a rich taste to give it that authentic Italian taste in your pasta sauce. You also need some seasoning, some spice. This black pepper we're going to use to season up our ground beef. You have some fennel seed. I love fennel seed. You don't have to put this in your pasta sauce, but I like to add it, so this is optional. We have some Italian seasoning, which is a mixture of different spices, dried spices. There's oregano in here. It has some minced garlic, some dried basil, and some dry sage. So just look for any Italian seasoning that you can add to your sauce. We have some onion powder that we're also going to be adding to our sauce, and we'll add a little bit of it to our ground beef, also known as ground chuck as well. And of course, you want to have some salt to taste. Next, you're going to need to have some ground beef, or also known as ground chuck. I like to use lean ground beef because it's not so fatty, a little bit more healthier than using a regular fatty cut meat. All right. You're going to need 1 or 2 eggs. What we do is we're going to crack this and we're going to use it during assembly to help bind the lasagna together, and I'll show you how to do that. You're going to need some grated mozzarella cheese. This again is one of the secrets to a really good lasagna. You want to use fairly good quality cheese, not too cheap. The lower the price or grade of cheese, the more artificial the cheese tastes. So you want to use something that's of good quality. We have some grated mozzarella here. I also like to mix in an Italian blend. As I said earlier, we're making an authentic Italian lasagna. So this is an Italian blend of cheese. It has some Asiago cheese in there, there's some provolone cheese in there, and there's also some Parmesan cheese in there. So we'll mix that in as we assemble our lasagna. So now that we have our tomatoes open, our whole plum tomatoes, we're gonna pour this into our blender. Just be careful because you don't want to have a lot of splattering. So now that you've poured your tomatoes into your blender, you want to cover it up. Everybody has a different blender that they use. So I like to pulse the tomatoes so that I can control how much they're being crushed. I don't want it to be completely smooth. I want there to be little tiny pieces of tomato in my sauce in addition to the diced tomatoes. So I'm gonna use the pulse button. Just hold it down and then just till you have a good consistency. Take a look and see where we're at. That looks pretty good to me, so I'm gonna stop the crushing process there. All right, now we're gonna get into starting our sauce on the stove. Okay, so we're going to start making our sauce and sauteing or cooking our ground beef simultaneously. We really don't need to do one and then the other. We could do them at the same time. So of course you're gonna turn on your stove. You wanna put it on a medium to high. You don't want it to be too high, but in the middle somewhere is good. So our back burner over here is going to be cooking our sauce. The front burner is going to be sauteing our ground beef. As a matter of fact, I'm going to turn the ground beef off for a second. We're going to start with our sauce. So just want to have a little bit of oil in there. Maybe about a tablespoon, not too much. We're going to let that start to, and we're going to go ahead actually and turn back on the burner for our beef. And also put about a teaspoon of oil in there. You don't need too much oil in that at all. All right, so let that warm up. All right, so we've got our oil, it's getting hot. We're gonna go ahead and add our diced onions that we chopped up earlier into that. As you can tell, the oil is hot. You could hear some crackling going on back there. And of course you need a spoon just to stir it around a little bit while that's sauteing. So you're gonna let your onions do its thing for a little bit. And then while that's going, we are going to get our beef started. Now, how I check if the oil is hot is by checking the consistency. It's not something that you have to do, but I can tell that the oil is hot because it becomes a little bit more liquid or runny, for lack of better words. So I can tell that it's hot. You don't want your oil to start smoking because then it's burning, and you definitely don't want to cook with burnt oil. So I'm gonna go ahead and I'm just gonna add my ground beef in there. Hear that crackling sound as well. Now at this point, you don't want to wait too long, because when your beef is cooked, it's too late to season it. So immediately when you have your beef on the fire, you want to add some salt. I just eyeball it. You don't want it to be too salty, but you don't want it to have too little salt either. So I've added my salt. I'm going to add a little bit of the black pepper, not too much. Again, that really depends on you and your preference. But really and truly, for this authentic Italian lasagna, you don't want the ground beef to be overpowered by the taste of black pepper. You just break it apart. And while that's going, I'm multitasking. So I'm checking out my onions. I'm gonna actually turn the heat up for the onions a little bit while those saute. These are doing quite nicely. So I'm gonna go ahead and add in the garlic that we diced earlier into that. Give it a little bit of a stir. And just leave that in there for it to caramelize, saute, whatever you want to call it. As long as it's cooked, we're good, we're on the same page. Okay, so as you can see, our onions are cooked, slightly brown. Again, like I said, you really want to be careful that you don't overcook them and burn them. So at this point, I'm going to add in our diced tomatoes. And just mix it all in together. Get a little bit more heat, not too much. And our beef is cooked, so I'm gonna turn that off and I'm just gonna set it to the side. And as a matter of fact, what we could do is we could turn off this back burner and we're gonna move this one to the front, because this is the only thing that we're left to make is our sauce. Okay, so at this point, I'm gonna start to season my sauce, my pasta sauce, and I'm gonna start by putting in some onion powder. Again, I know for those of you that are beginners in cooking, you might wanna know, okay, how many teaspoons, how many tablespoons? I would say the equivalent of what I'm about to put in onion powder would be about 1 teaspoon, but I'm eyeballing it, so I'm just sprinkling it in there. About 1 teaspoon of onion powder. With my oregano seasoning, my Italian seasoning, I'm just going to dap a little bit in there, not too much. These are dry spices, so as they cook, the flavors begin to emit and blend into the food. This is fennel. Fennel is a very strong or a pungent spice, so if you're not familiar with it, I would advise trying it out a little bit before using it in your food. But I'm just gonna put a couple of dabs in my sauce. I like fennel, so I lied, that's more than a couple. I like it a lot. So I put quite a bit of fennel in my sauce. I'm gonna turn down my heat a little bit and mix it up. And just let it cook through. At this point, I'm gonna add some of the red wine. Again, you don't wanna put too much wine in your sauce, so I just take a couple of capfuls, like 1, 2, and that's it. I don't put too much wine in my sauce. But it really does add a nice flavor to your sauce. And as you can see, our onions are nicely sauteed, tomatoes are sauteed, got your garlic in there, so all the spices are coming together. All right, now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take the tomatoes that we pureed earlier, and then I'm gonna pour that in. You can see the little chunks of tomato that I talked about. They're not as chunky as the diced tomato, but they're still a good size. So put that in there. And as we stir it, we can cover it up and just let it simmer. All right, guys, so we're down to the home stretch. We're gonna assemble our lasagna. I'm really excited. I love making lasagna because it's just a beautiful dish, a beautiful meal to present before your friends and family when you have people over. So let's put this together. Our sauce has cooked through nicely. As you can see, the steam coming out of the sauce. I'm just gonna set this aside. Now, if you could see this, when you have oil assembled on the top of your sauces or whatever you cook, that's a good indication that it's cooked through. Remember that water evaporates, oil doesn't really evaporate. So when you see that oil sitting on top of your sauce, you know that it's ready, okay? Make sure you set something on top of the countertop if you're bringing it immediately from the stove to the counter so you don't burn your countertop. That's why I have this towel here. And then I'm gonna set that on top of the towel. For the gentlemen, yes, I'm speaking to you guys. Sometimes we do things a little bit differently than women. If you don't set a towel on top of your counter and you're married like I am, your wife will be very upset because you would have burned her counter. And probably won't eat your lasagna. I'm just joking. Anyway, so we're gonna start by just stir it up a little bit, and then I'm gonna take some of this sauce and I'm gonna put it on the bottom of my casserole bowl. This is just to line the bottom of your bowl so that it's not dry at the bottom and the pasta that we're gonna put in doesn't just stick to the bottom. Remember I told you about the eggs that we're gonna use? So we'll take these out and we're just gonna, of course, crack them. I just hit it one time there, throw that part out. Make sure there are no eggshells in your food. I have, some people will say the eggshells in there for a little bit of crunch. Lasagna is not supposed to be that kind of crunchy, so please make sure you don't put any eggshells in your egg mix. So you have your eggs in there, you just beat it. Mix it up real good. You want to mix your yolk in together with your egg whites till it's mixed up real nice. Okay, because you're gonna need all of this stuff while you're assembling. So at this point, so you have some sauce on the bottom of your casserole bowl or plate, dish, whatever you want to call it. Remember earlier I told you about oven ready lasagna? There are different types of lasagna to use. I like oven ready because it cooks with the liquid from your sauce and the moisture from your cheese while it's in the oven. Other types of lasagna or pasta, the lasagna pasta, you have to pre-boil that before putting it in there. Now, I told you I'll tell jokes. I'm gonna tell you one joke. When I was a kid, my dad made lasagna for me and my sisters one time, and his lasagna, not one time, a couple times, his lasagna always used to be really crunchy. And we used to say, Dad, I don't think the lasagna is supposed to be crunchy like that. And he would say, no, that's how it's supposed to be. My dad is from Ghana, West Africa, so he has a little bit of an accent when he speaks. But he would say, yes, it's supposed to be crunchy. I'm like, no, Dad, it's not supposed to be crunchy. And then one day, I went to my aunt's house and had lasagna, and her lasagna was not crunchy. So when I grew up and figured out how to make lasagna, I realized the reason why Dad's lasagna was crunchy was because he bought the type of shell that had to be pre-cooked, and he didn't know it was supposed to be pre-cooked, and he put it in there like that. So to make things easier, guys, if you don't want to pre-cook your pasta, just get oven-ready lasagna. All right, let's go. Yeah, sorry, Dad, I have to tell that secret. So you open it up. We're gonna take one pasta shell. We're gonna line it in the bowl. You can overlap it a little bit. Put it in there. Just go with the 3. Actually, it doesn't need to overlap. This is actually very fortunate for us that the size of the lasagna shells fit perfectly into our tray. So we have our sauce on the bottom. We have one row of lasagna shells, and then we're gonna go back and we're gonna put some more sauce. You don't want your lasagna to be dry. So you want to be quite generous with your sauce, but you also, depending on how much you made or how much you have, if you made it from scratch, you need to make sure that you balance, because you don't want to also get to the top of the lasagna and you don't have any more sauce. That would be a shame. So we put our lasagna shells, we got our sauce. We're gonna take that ground beef that we cooked up, looking real beautiful. We're gonna sprinkle it. Like at this point, it's really a matter of preference, how you want to, or how much beef you want to put in there. I don't like mine to be overly beefed, to tell you the truth. I mean, I eat beef, but it's not my my favorite type of meat. So anyway, I just put a little bit of ground beef in the sauce there, and now this is the fun part. You take your cheese, and you just sprinkle it over that first layer. There are different types of lasagna that you can make. Lasagna is essentially, it's a casserole of some sort. And for those of you that cook regularly, you know that there's different types of casseroles. So you can put different things into your lasagna. But today we're just making regular meat lasagna. And then you take your egg and you just sprinkle it on top just like that. Basically what this does is it helps to bind the lasagna together. And basically what that means is it helps it to hold it together so that when you serve it, you have that nice piece, and you'll see that at the end. Now I'm gonna take the Italian blend of cheese and put it in there. Again, I said that this has some Asiago, it has some provolone, it has some Parmesan, and all these cheeses have different flavors, they have different tastes, so they emit different tastes. That's why I mix it up. Now we're gonna go back to our second level. I think by the time we're done, we might be able to hit four layers. So the fun part about a lasagna is, again, you can control how many layers you want it to be. You don't want to overdo it, but you know, I've seen as high as a 10-layer lasagna. So anyway, like I said, we probably might get to 4 or 5, we'll see how it goes. I like presentation. Presentation is key. So I take some pieces of this fresh basil, which I planted and grew myself. I'm very proud of myself. And I'm just gonna put this on there. You know, as I'm looking at it, I have put 6 pieces of basil evenly across the lasagna. So you'll see how that works out when we cut it. Before this goes in the oven, you gotta cover it. You need to cover your lasagna, and this will also help with the steaming portion of cooking it. Just cover it up, foil paper, nice and tight. And now we can put it in the oven, 25, 30 minutes, 350 degrees, and then we'll see what happens. All right, so our lasagna had time to cook in the oven. We had it in there for about 35 minutes at 350 degrees. Let's see what happened. And there you go, perfect, lovely looking lasagna. I'm gonna slice it. And this bad boy is ready to eat. All sliced. Scoop up a piece. Look at that cheese, beautiful. See what I told you about putting the sauce on the bottom of the tray? It helps it from getting stuck and sticking on the bottom. Fresh basil on there. And there you go. Perfect, delicious lasagna ready to serve. Enjoy it. It's been a pleasure cooking with you guys. I had fun. I hope you had fun too. Until next time, stay safe, and we'll do this again soon. Have a good one.